Glory playeth nothing but chance, and more chance. This are not thine elder matriarch station.
Hello everyone. How goes it? Let's see. Make sure everything's turned on, everything's going. Everyone hear me okay? Hey, Feeling Objective, how are you? Get some water in my little Gatorade lid here so that I've got some fresh water to hand right on my palate. Ah, we're getting real close to this being done. And frankly, we went a lot farther than I initially thought we were going to. I kind of got super sucked into it. Let's see, what else? We still need to do this tooth here. Probably something here. That looks fine. That's fine. Grenade. Crack grenade. Need to clean up this because I got some paint transfer. I need to refine the wolf's head a little bit and do the red spears on the wolf's head. So we're almost there. I think we're almost there, almost done. And then of course there's just painting the base. Not too bad. I've been busy with work and haven't had much of a chance to paint, but I'm happy to apply your advice of trying to paint at least 15-30 minutes a day. Yeah, if you know, don't feel like if you have to do it if you can't. You know, making it a habit is really helpful, and it really does help you develop the muscle memory and everything if you paint more often. But you know, paint what is realistic for you. Don't turn it into a chore either. You know, you want to be good at painting. You don't want to hate painting because you want to be good at it, right? Like if you torture yourself eventually with painting, eventually you may resent it and you may be like, nope, screw painting, I don't want to do this anymore, this is stupid. And that's, you know, that's the opposite of what we really want, right? But yeah, try and see if you can. See if you can paint for a little bit every day or a little bit every other day. The main point there is that repetition, more often repetition, will develop your skill and your muscle memory and your muscle coordination faster than doing giant chunks of painting every now and then. Giant chunks of painting every now and then is not going to develop your fine motor control, your hand-eye coordination anywhere near as doing, you know, repeatedly working on developing that over a longer period, over, you know, short periods of time, multiple times a week. So whatever is going to work best for you. Oh, 55 stream streak. Dang, Romans. Thank you. How are you doing? I did see your invite, and I did accept that, so I hope you saw that. look forward to seeing you guys again. We're on the last legs of painting up this wolf spear Space Marine. So it's a successor chapter to the Space Wolves. Probably one of the better known Primaris specific Space Wolf successor chapters, since they don't have very many of them. But you know, because they don't have many of them, not everybody knows that they have any. So, this is a wolf spear. We just painted him up as a blood claw, or the equivalent of a blood claw in Primaris armor. Had a lot of fun painting him. Definitely went a lot farther than I was planning on going. Ended up doing a lot more. Trying bacon wrapped meatloaf. That sounds amazing. Like, I'm a simple man. You tell me meatloaf, and I'm just like, I'm there. Meatloaf is delicious. Bacon wrapped meatloaf sounds incredible. What chapter are you painting? Yeah, this is a wolf spear. Wolf spear, Primaris Space Marine. Hey, Marshy, how are you doing? I'm glad you've arrived. Lathan, how are you? Been a few days. How's it going? Yeah, it's been a little while. It's been going all right. I did not end up streaming last Friday because it was very, very hot, and I was just frankly, I didn't have the spoons. I did not have the spoons for it, not just because of the heat, for several other things that were going on. So I do apologize for missing 2 Friday streams in a row. But I frankly just did not have the spoons. And by that I just mean I didn't have the emotional energy and the desire, the emotional desire to make myself presentable and acceptable for public consumption. So we're gonna wait for that to dry and do a little bit more there. We do need to do the gold non-metallic here on the handle, and then the wrap. Let's see, what was next? Yeah, we need to tighten this up. I got some brown on the thigh armor, so we're gonna touch that up, starting out with some neutral gray, and then we'll see how much dark gray we need to put in there to get it to match the color we need. Heat's been awful. Yeah, it's been pretty warm. Pretty warm. Today wasn't too bad. The weekend wasn't terrible, but Friday was pretty warm. So I apologize for missing stream on Friday, but I appreciate y'all's understanding. I think that's all we really need right there. Is there any mixed type of people, gang? Like, instead of just single stereotypes in Necromunda? Yeah, Travis, there's the Venator gang. The Venator gangs are groups of they're groups of bounty hunters and hive scum that don't belong to any one gang house. And you can, and then you can, you know, mix and match different, you know, you could use all the models from the different gangs and make different Venator gangers, and they'll all be, you know, freelance bounty hunters, things like that. And but you could use whatever models you want out of the different gangs for that. Yeah, that's absolutely something you could do. You could also just, you know, skin. You could, like, hey, I'm gonna make this gang out of these models. They're not standard Necromunda models, but I'm going to use these Necromunda rules for them. And as long as your opponents are okay with that, you can absolutely do that too. But within the rules, look up the Venator gang, and that will let you do what you're talking about. I have an idea for my campaign that the end boss for me and my buds are Imperial Fists. Ooh, is there rules for Space Marines? No, there are no rules for Space Marines. Right now, you'd probably need to. There are homebrew rules for Space Marines. Hey, F&Z Hobbies. But there are no official rules for Space Marines because there's no possibility that... Because one, they don't really want to do that, at least officially. And two... There's really almost no possibility that a ganger could kill a Space Marine or a group of gangers could kill a Space Marine. Assuming we're talking about Space Marines as they are presented within lore rather than as they are presented in the tabletop. In the tabletop, yes, they could. Like enough Imperial Guard troopers will kill a Space Marine. Within the lore, it is very, very unlikely that a group of normal humans would ever kill a Space Marine, but it does happen. It does happen, but that's also for plot purposes. So they really don't have rules for that. Now, we know Imperial Fists are there because the Imperial Fists have a chapter house on Necromunda. I don't remember if it's on Hive Primus or it's a different hive or if it's completely separate, but we know they have a chapter house on Necromunda. Necromunda is a recruiting world for the Imperial Fists. So we know they're there. But I don't think we have any rules for them. Hey, buddy, didn't see what I wasn't following so fix. Hey, appreciate that, Andy. Lethan, what is Necromunda? Necromunda is a skirmish scale game by Games Workshop where you are... Instead of like commanding armies, you command gangs, hiver gangs, on a world called Necromunda, which is a hive world. And yeah, instead of like big armies and large political, tactical decisions and things like that, you are just trying to survive. You are a ganger trying to survive in the Warhammer as a civilian in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. And yeah, it's all about gang warfare. I think the original Necromunda rulebook, original Necromunda game came out in 94. And that's what it was. It just centered around, hey, you guys wanna just be regular dudes in 40K? All right, here's a gang. You guys get to be criminals in a hive world. Sweet. It's a lot of fun. It's got some of the coolest models. I think Necromunda has some of the coolest models. Just because they're not tied down so much by the different armies in 40K. The different armies in 40K really have fairly strict aesthetics. Space Marines have to look like Space Marines, right? Tyranids have to look like Tyranids. Necromunda, there are so many tiny sub-factions that you could make all kinds of stuff and it'll all fit. It would all make sense. So there's a lot of like sci-fi level creativity that you can do inside of Necromunda, or Games Workshop can do inside of Necromunda. That doesn't get tied down by lots of pre-existing overwhelming amounts of lore. There is a lot of lore for Necromunda. There's books and books and books on it. There's Black Library novels and things like that, but it's nowhere near as strongly codified. I've been painting trim recently, and the lip connecting to the armor has been hard. Any tips? The lip connecting to the armor. I don't think I understand, Chili. I'd love to be able to try and address that. I'm not... trim. No, I totally understand, Chili. When you're talking about the inner side of the side, which part of the model are we talking about? Are we talking about a Space Marine, or are we talking about something else? We'll figure this out. My idea was laying out explosive barrels, activated particular low Cambridge damage for one. That's a good idea. Gang leaders somehow having access to Terminator suits. Uses max. Yeah, you could do that, or you could put them. Hey, Codecrafter, how are you doing? Yeah, there's a couple different ways that you could do it. You could also give them like Ambot suits or something similar. Follow Warfare minis because they honestly seem to fit the setting. Yeah, absolutely. I do stuff like that where my combat patrol goes through the warp and comes out in Halo. Oh, that'd be cool. That'd be cool, Donington. Like the inner part of the side. What chapter is this? This is Wolf Spears Airborne AK. This is a Space Wolf. This is a Space Wolf successor chapter that was created by Gulliman out of the Unnumbered Suns. So this is a Primaris only Space Wolf chapter, or successor chapter called the Wolf Spears. I'm painting Imperial Knight, and the main trim is fine, but the side of it I'm struggling with. Okay, so are you talking about are you talking about like say this is the trim here on your Imperial Knight, like this lip here, and then there's the main surface, and then there's this trim, and then it's this side in here, like this side right here, that kind of that raised little cliff? Okay, that can be very tough to do. So what I would recommend, you're just gonna have to, there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can just take your time and, you know, paint along the inside of that very, very carefully. It's going to take some time. And then if you mess up, you clean it up afterwards. So if you like, you get some of that gold or whatever the trim color is, you get it over on your main color. You're just gonna have to go back and wait for it to dry and then clean up the main color, paint back over that. The other option is you could just leave it blank, or you could take a darker color and just have that darker color go right in that joint where the lip meets the main surface, and use that to dark line. And instead of making it like gold, you make it like a brown or something like that, a really dark brown, and that will help to outline the gold and separate it visually from the main surface. So you've got a couple different options there. None of them are fast. Like, that's one of the problems with like embossed or raised up details, is getting that inside. Is you can either leave it or you have to paint it, and if you're going to paint it, it's going to take time. There's no fast, easy way to do it. Not without like using washes, and then you're still gonna have to clean that up a little bit. Yeah, Airborne. It's not just because of their gene seed. That's certainly part of it, but it's also just because the Space Wolves never embraced the Codex Astartes, and the Codex Astartes is the thing that mandated that Space Marine chapters, the original Space Marine legions, split off into their component chapters. And because there were multiple Space Marine legions who didn't do that, the Dark Angels, and the Space Wolves particularly, they refused to adopt the Codex Astartes, which means they did not split themselves up into successor chapters. So successor chapters for both of them are fairly rare. There's liquid skin too that you can put a layer down first and then paint. Yeah, that is possible. My Infiltrator squad was a pain in the butt to paint. After assembly, have you ever done base on sprues before? No, I refuse. I absolutely refuse because it doesn't save you any time. I don't see how it could possibly save you time because you're painting on the sprue and then you have to clip the piece off the sprue, which means you could scuff the paint. But then where you clip it off the sprue, you still have to clean that up. You still have to sand that down. You still have to make sure that's smooth, and that's going to remove a bunch of the paint. And also, whenever you glue two pieces together, if you don't remove the paint from those glue points, you're not gluing the model to the model. You're gluing one layer of fragile paint to another layer of fragile paint. And that's not going to be secure. I personally see zero meaningful advantage to painting on the sprue. However, if that just works better for the way your brain works, which is totally legitimate, and you're perfectly happy putting in the extra cleanup work and the fact that you are going to have to clean up and repaint certain areas after you clip them on, and you're gonna have to scrape some of your paint off. If you're fine with all that extra work and it just works better for your brain, all power to you. It does not work for my brain at all. It actually, my brain makes me cringe thinking of doing that, just because I don't see the advantage to it, and that just makes my neurospiciness go like, nah. So that's just me. I have friends who paint on the sprue, and I gently, friendly rib them about it. But it makes sense for them. It works for the way their brains work, and that's fine. I've given up on painting being fast. Don't worry. Yeah, painting's not going to be fast until you paint a lot. Accenting. Sir, can you tell me the lore of what a Juicar is? Is this in Necromunda? Are you talking about the Justicars in Necromunda? The closest thing I can think of, if we're talking about Necromunda, is the Justicars, which are the Palanite enforcers that go after the nobility. And so they're basically the enforcers, the law keepers who go after nobles who break the law in an egregious manner inside of Necromunda. It's generally they are judge, jury, and executioner. They will arrive to the part of the spire that the noble is in. The noble in question is in. They will cut off all exits. They will try the noble in absentia. So they'll set up in the lobby, basically, have a trial, find the noble guilty or something else, and then they'll go in and go after the noble and capture them if they can. If they can't, then they'll just kill them. If they can, then they'll capture them, arrest them, and inform them of their charges and inform them of their guilty verdict, and then off they go to punishment. But they are the arm of the Palanite enforcers who enforce the laws on the nobles. And if you know much about nobility in settings like Necromunda or settings like 40k in general, you have to have done some really bad stuff as a noble for anything bad to happen to you. I just have issues getting those nitpicky interspaces when assembled. Yeah, and there's ways to do that. There's absolutely ways to do that. You can just not assemble the model all the way. Like, so if maybe, let's say, Let's say you're painting a guy that's built like this. This is a chibi version of a Space Marine, but you've got a guy with a bolter across his chest. It's really hard to paint this eagle with a bolter across the chest. So you can assemble most of the model and just not put the bolter on, and then paint the bolter separately. That's much less work to put the bolter on than to paint the bolter separately with most of the model built. Then you can paint the eagle in behind on the chest and then glue the bolter on afterwards. That's much less work than completely painting the mini on the sprue. So those are called sub-assemblies. So that's one way you can do it. And hey, if painting on the sprue makes better sense for you, do that. That's fine. It just doesn't work for me. And I've thought about trying it, and it's just no. I'm not willing to try it because my brain just says no. Any advice on painting orc skin? Well, there's a bunch of different ways to paint orc skin. You can do kind of like the olive orc skin. You can do kind of orc skin that's got kind of like pinkish tones at the area, at like some of the areas. There's also the super like lime green orc skin or the really bright vibrant orc skin. It really depends on which one of those it's going to do. All green skin is going to look a little weird because our brain isn't really set to recognize green skin very well. So choose kind of a type of green skin you want to do, and whether it's like super saturated or you want to go more olive or you want to do something else, and just try a bunch of different recipes and see what you can do. I've not painted a ton of orc skin. I did practice on this guy over here. This is actually an ogre, but this is more of an olive orc skin. And you see, I went with kind of a bluish dark green underneath, and then I used more olive and jungle tone greens to work up. And I the way I blended the skin and everything was very similar to the way I do like normal human skin, whether it's dark or light. But I'm just using different green tones, and I went with more olive than not. I don't DM, not for many years. I mostly paint. I play, but I mostly paint. Do I paint 3D printed figures? Yes, I have many 3D printed figures that I have painted. She's a 3D print that I painted up for a class. Yeah, 3D printed figures are awesome. This guy was 3D printed for Trench Crusade. If I'm going to paint a 3D printed mini, it does need to be a resin one though. I'm not a fan of working with filament miniatures. Not until the filament's better. Jokingly, just put the bases on the table and say they're purple. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, purple works. It's just a blank base. Hey, this is probably a question you get all the time, but do you have any advice on painting non-metallic metal silver? What type of advice are you looking for? General non-metallic metal. I did do a video on this, the kind of the 3 core principles, at least the beginning 3 core principles of non-metallic metal. So that is a video, a fairly recent video on my TikTok, but I'll walk y'all through it here real quick. And this is true for any non-metallic metal. So I have 2 cylinders here. One is matte, one is metallic, and we're going to take a look at how they're both very different, and this will give you some basic principles about non-metallic metal. So matte surfaces, you can see that we've got a highlight, and we've got our shadow, and it's kind of it's a slow fade. The highlight's not super intense, the shadow's not super intense. But if we look at the metallic up here, Our midtone, our highlight is very, very bright. Our midtone is like right there in the middle. It's very similar to this in terms of tone, and our shadow is much darker. And that's because the highlight on non-metallic metal, or the specular highlight, is a reflection, a more concentrated reflection of our light sources. These are my two table lamps here. These are reflections of those light sources, and the shadows are actually reflections of the inside of my hand, of my darker shelves over here. So principle number one is on reflective surfaces, highlights are brighter, shadows are darker. Okay? If you compare a reflective surface to a non-reflective surface, the reflective surface is going to have brighter highlights and will usually have much darker shadows. Not always, but usually will have darker shadows. The second principle is, do you see how smoothly it kind of goes into a highlight? It goes from kind of a mid-tone into a highlight and then back into the mid-tone and the shadow over here. You see how smooth that gradient is? It's a very slow, smooth movement from one to the other. Whereas here, we've got our shadow, our mid-tone, and straight fast into our highlight. Just boom! It's very, very short, this transition. So on reflective surfaces, the transition between the midtone and the highlight is fast. It's usually fairly fast for shadows too, but not as fast. The transition between midtone and highlight, midtone and shadow, is a little bit more gradual, but the transition between midtone and highlight is quick. That helps build up the optical illusion that this is reflecting a light source, because this is a reflected image of your light source, remember? And what we're trying to do when you're painting non-metallic metal is you're trying to create an optical illusion. So brighter highlights, darker shadows, fast transitions, and then your edges, your edge highlights, those exist on the matte surfaces, but they're more dramatic on non-metallic surfaces. You can see up here, we've got our edge highlight here. We've got kind of obviously an edge highlight here, but the edge highlights are more dramatic on metallic surfaces. Those are the three kind of main things that set up this optical illusion. Now, where to place highlights, where to place shadows, bounce highlights, bounce lights from other surfaces nearby, things like that. That's additional stuff that I am going to be making videos about later. So let's see here. We've got our red here, and then you can see that reflected red here in the side of this metallic surface, right? So this is what's called a bounce highlight. This is light from another surface that is bouncing here and illuminating this, but it's going to take on some of the color of this other surface. So if I were to put in like a blue, let's do a blue surface. Let's see here. I got a blue cube, and we've got light hitting there. Now we've got a blue bounce highlight, a bounce reflection. You see that? It's making it's making that gold look colder because it's got some blue now. Whereas if we switch back to red, now you can see that bounce highlight, that bounce reflection is red. It's warmer there. So that's another thing to think about. And highlight placement, those are other things that help sell the reflective surface. Those first three things: dark hot shadows, bright highlights, fast transitions, and dramatic edge highlights. Those things will set up the most basic optical illusion of non-metallic metal. Does that help? Is that a good place to start there? Sneaky 30k wolves. No, this is a wolf spear, Michael. Wolf spear. This is 40k. Get a 40k. I love stompy robots and looking at titans. Yeah, gromets. That's awesome. I play D&D and I play in a paladin. I start Lady Luck, and my DM lets me tame one. A unicorn. Oh, that would be cool. Wild. Yep. What's your opinion on slap chop? Useful for getting miniatures on the table. Not useful for learning how to actually paint. And I don't mean actually paint by like slap chop isn't painting. Slap chop is painting because you're applying paint. But slap chop doesn't teach you how light works. It doesn't teach you how to render volumes manually and how to understand how to volumetric highlight. Slap chop does a really good job of getting a good quality colored miniature. Gets color on the mini. It does a lot of the work for you. And it gets the mini on the table. And if that's all you need, perfect. It is fantastic for that. But if you're looking to learn things like this of how do you paint reflective looking armor, slap chop's not going to teach you this. You're not going to be able to do this with pure slap chop because this requires more than just dry brushing and throwing a contrast paint on. And you're not going to learn this by just doing slap chop. You can do slap chop and learn this and practice this elsewhere and then combine them. Juan Hidalgo Miniatures does a really good job of doing things like working in under painting and working in layers and then doing a contrast paint over that and then getting this type of result fairly quickly, but he doesn't do slap chop. Slap chop doesn't do this. It's not capable of doing this. Other forms of working with contrast paints are capable of doing this, but slap chop is simply not capable of doing this because it's not its purpose. Excellent breakdown. Good. Hey, MiniWiz, it's going to be a while till I get access to a fluorescent paint. So any advice? I'm still working on figuring out how to do plasma Flemish. Lots of people do plasma without fluorescent paints. El Miniaturista and some other people have really used fluorescent paints to make it really popular, but it's certainly not necessary. If you want to pump up the brightness of plasma, do pure white, let that dry, and then take some really saturated contrast or something like or even regular paint and paint that over the white areas. That will pump up the brightness of those colors, as opposed to, like, say you wanted to do red plasma. Doing this bold pyro red just over black is not going to be very punchy. Painting the white over the black, like where all the ribs are on the plasma weapon, and then glazing bold pyro red over that will create a much punchier, almost fluorescent level of brightness. But fluorescent paints are a recent thing. People have been doing plasma, really dramatic plasma without fluorescent paints for a long time. Fluorescent paints just are even brighter. They're certainly not necessary by any means, but they look cool. Thanks. I've been struggling with where to place light and blending from dark to light. Yeah, that's one of the things with non-metallic metals. It does. Placing how to know where to place the highlights can be pretty tough. And that's something you learn some rules of thumb, things like that. For this particular miniature, I imagined 4 light sources. So one from this angle right here, and so I'm imagining the lights coming in just like this, straight in. So I've got the light source here, 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 and straight up here, and then down on the foot, and then back there it's catching light from this same light source. And then over here I'm imagining the light source from this direction. And so I've got a light source here, here. I'm trying to paint these in such a way that they're representing where the direction of that light source. And this takes time. It takes time to figure this out. But I'll hopefully be doing a video on getting some rules of thumb on like light direction. And highlight direction, but it is not a terribly easy thing to imagine until you've rattled it around in your head a lot. It took me a long time to even get a general idea of it. Doesn't Elementary use oil-based, watered down for his glowy stuff? Yeah, he does that with white. It's either oil-based white or an enamel white that he puts down, and then he does the brighter paints over it, and that's for the same reason. The white allows the saturation to show up of those paints a lot more, and you can do the same thing with acrylics. You just doing it with oils is just easier because it's easier to clean up. Thank you. Would Doomfire magenta over white ink be fine for a magenta plasma? I think so. I'm trying to remember Doomfire. Is that the darker magenta or is the lighter magenta? You could also try it on the back of a spoon or the back of a sprue. So like you could take something like the back of a sprue here, and using white. This is light gray, but using white, you could paint. This is not sticking well because it's not primed. But you could paint a bunch of straight lines here. Just like the ribs on the plasma. Once this dries, then you could paint Doomfire magenta over that and see what it does. That'd be a good way to test it instead of testing it on a live model. Yeah, I don't know how much dark it is. The darker contrast paints tend to be more opaque, and the lighter ones tend to be more transparent, just because of the way they work. So Doomfire might end up being too dark. So I'd try that and see what that looks like, and if that's too dark, then try the lighter one. Good tip I find for light source is to prime your model into semi-gloss. Yeah. Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways that you can do that too. Absolutely. Take your model like this guy, right? And then either use a lamp and shine it from above, right there. Or you can take some colored paper, some white paper, and do that. And that's good for global highlighting. That's not going to do this. It's not going to do the same for non-metallics, because metallic surfaces do not reflect light in the same way that matte surfaces do. They just don't. Metallic surfaces are their reflections, because they're so polished. And because the reflected light is not as diffused as on a matte surface, the location of the highlight is far more dependent on the angle you're viewing the reflective surface and what angle the light source is from the reflective surface to your eye. So here is an example of some pink non-metallic metal. You see we've got the reflection shifted forward here on this shoulder pad. That's because of the way that reflective surfaces reflect light. If this was a matte surface, then just the top of this would be lit up, right? It would just the top of it would be lit up because it's a more diffuse illumination. But with a more polished more polished reflection, if the light source is coming down from straight above, and you're looking at it at the model straight on, then because of the way the light is bouncing, this angle of the armor is what bounces those photons from the light source off the surface and into your eye. If farther down here, those photons get redirected down. They get redirected away from your eye, so you're not going to see as much light bouncing off of this surface here, because those photons aren't directed to, as many of them as from the light source aren't as many, not as many of them are directed towards your eye. Up here, they're being bounced up and away from your eye. There's obviously still some getting to your eye, but it's nowhere near as much. So the ones that are bouncing off the surface that is angled in such a way that most of those bounce straight into your eye, that's where you see the highlight. And that is completely dependent on where you are seeing it, because if I come down here, now the surface that's angled most towards my eye is down here, so I'll see the reflection here instead of up here, because now I'm down below. The light is coming down here, coming down, and it's bouncing off that angle, and that angle is different than up here. And now this angle is what's bouncing the light into my eye, not this one. So the highlight will actually shift. It'll actually change because of the angle that I'm looking at it is different. So where the light, those photons are bouncing off the surface changes, and then that causes the appearance of the highlight to change. That is very loosely, very, very ham-fisted kind of explanation. Part of it is called angle of incidence within physics. But that's very, very loose explanation of it. So the rule of thumb is if the light source is straight above, and you're looking at the model straight on, then the light source is going to be 45 degrees in between the light source above and your angle and your view here. So that's gonna create a right angle, your angle of view coming like this direction, right? And then the light source coming down. That's coming down straight down. You're looking at it straight on. That creates a right angle. It's 90 degrees. The highlight will appear at 45 degrees on the surface. And then if your viewing angle comes up higher, and you're, say, looking at it from 65 degrees, is no longer a right angle, then the highlight will move up to maybe 40 degrees. It moves in relation to your angle. But if the sun also moves back and forth, that will also change where that midpoint is. It's not easy. It gets into physics, which if you want to be like really, 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 really like accurate about it, but also remember that we are painting tiny little plastic army men. And if you are looking for like competition stuff, then yeah, you can think about this a lot more. But if you're not thinking about competition, then just get it to look close enough and you're good. What's your take on coppertist? I have no idea what that is, Jimbo, and I'm not clicking on any links. What's the closest thing to Skavens before in 40K? Ooh, I don't know that Tyranids. Closest thing to Skavens is in 40K is Tyranids. That's a nice Tau you're painting. Tyranids are plague mutants. Yeah. Yeah, I'd say so. Because if we're going from like a philosophical point of view, the Skaven are about corruption, and there's nothing in 40K that's just pure corruption. So the things that would be closest would be like Nurgle, or just if we're thinking about corruption, the closest thing would be Nurgle. If we're thinking about kind of like their overwhelming pack mentality and that kind of stuff, then it's Tyranids. Genestealer cultists, yeah, kind of, but Genestealers, they're not about corruption though. They're more about subversion. But I could absolutely see Genestealer cultists being, fitting into that a little bit. I don't think there's any one-to-one equivalent of Skaven in 40K. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Better model, squats or League of Votann? Oh man, Axe Rat, that's tough. They're both really cool, but I'm a big fan of Necromunda, and so the squats get my vote. Don't get me wrong, I've painted lots of stuff for that's League of Votann. That's been like all of my Golden Demon entries have been League of Votann stuff, but the squats make me happy. Mutations of the Warp would be close. Nurgle Mutant Orcs. Yeah, could be. Absolutely. Midnight Ghoul. Hey, how are you? I combine reflective stuff around my house for reference and vibes. Yes, absolutely. I'm constantly looking around when I sit down at like restaurants and stuff like that. I'm looking at, I'm taking pictures of reflective surfaces. It's really weird. Let me pull back here. Where are my So here's this was at a pizza parlor, and I was just noticing like, hey, that's interesting. Look how the light reflects off of these different, these different shapes, and see that we've got one light source, right? This is just a window, and each surface is reflecting it separately, but they're all slightly different. The shape is slightly different. These are more flat. This is more of a rounded ring, so it changes the shape of the highlight on each one of these. Then you look at this shallow dome on the salt shaker and the pepper shaker, and you see the overhead light here and how that is. And then all these other surfaces, the light is, these are from the windows and not from above, and so you can see the color difference here. And look how we've got light, we've got our highlight, and we've got super dark, and then we go straight into our overhead light. Whereas over here, we've got there's no super dark right around separating the overhead light from the light from the other side of the place with the windows. So this right here, this is just here when they're this close together and in this particular environmental setup. Whereas over here, where things are a little bit more spread out, maybe there's not as much dark space in between this overhead light and the window over here. There's no dark there. And then I did the same thing here. And this is at a hookah lounge. This is a giant hookah that's made out of brass and silver. Where was this? I don't remember. When I'm traveling, I try different hookah lounges. But you see how the light from behind me is bouncing off of here. This is a really interesting shape. It's got a lot of really cool stuff to it, and it's just is an interesting kind of study on light reflecting and how light, this more white light from the outside looks different on the brass. And so, when you start getting more and more into non-metallic metal and light reflection in general, open your eyes to see this kind of stuff, because it's helpful, and it helps train your eyes to see more. You can, instead of just seeing the stuff around you, you get to see more and say, well, why does it look like that? And that's one of the cool things I love about painting in general and learning more about it, is because I get to, when I look around the world, I have a slightly different understanding of what the world looks like and why it looks like the way it is. And it just makes it, to me, it makes the world more interesting. Squats for life, eggs defeat. Can you describe the Legend of the Legend of the Legion of the Damned? I mean, kind of. We don't really know who the Legion of the Damned are. There are some theories that they lost Space Marine chapter that was lost in the warp, and came back, and they're all like, either they came back and they're cursed by the warp, or something else where they've got this kind of undead flaming head thing going on. or there's other things that seem to have explained it. We're not entirely certain what they are, but what we do know is when they show up in situations where it seems very, very hopeless. The Emperor's faithful are being overrun, and they show up out of smoke and flames, out of nowhere, speaking to no one. They drive back the Emperor's foes, and then just as quickly as they appeared, they disappear. Again, leaving, no communications, nothing. They come in, they destroy the Emperor's enemies, and then they leave. But there's no indication if they're just some weird space marines that use a lot of infiltration tactics. There's no indication if they're warp entities, or if they're otherwise using some form of warp craft. We're just not sure. There are theories that they are actually the loyalist space marines that were murdered on Istvan V, because in the book The Emperor of Mankind, I believe it is, the Emperor and the Mechanicus and the Sisters of Silence and the Custodes are fighting in the basement of the palace, trying to re-secure the human webway. And in part of that, the Emperor summons in the ultimate clash in that fight. The Emperor summons a bunch of Space Marines that appear out of nowhere and are all wreathed in flame. And Ferrus Manus, the Primarch of the Iron Hands, he is in that company. He is leading those flaming Space Marines, those mysterious Space Marines that are all on fire and wreathed in warp flame. He leads them in his charge alongside the Emperor. So it's thought that maybe the Legion of the Damned were originally made up of the murdered loyalists on Istvan V, but we don't know. We don't even know if those were actually Legion of the Damned, or if those were just the Emperor creating specters to fight. And that was just, he was just using the image of his son Ferrus and the fallen Space Marines. We don't know, but it's pretty cool to think about. What are the Legion of the Damned? Maybe it's a mix of both. Maybe the initial group of Legion of the Damned were the murdered Space Marines of Istvan V, and then as time moves on, certain warp accidents and things like that cause other Space Marines or other people to be subsumed into the warp, and the Emperor takes them into his service directly within the warp. Who knows? Maybe the Emperor, the Legion of the Damned are actually Space Marines who exist within the human webway, and that's how they're appearing out of nowhere and out of smoke and fire. They're actually a secret group of Space Marines that live within the webway, or the human webway, and are only periodically able to find their way out, and only in times of desperate need. We don't know. There's a bunch of possibilities. They're all kind of cool, but we don't have any confirmation. Oh, we got ads going. Tiff, I don't use dry brushing much, unless I'm doing more of a tabletop quality. If I'm trying to push myself or do a higher quality, then yeah, I don't use dry brushing very much. There's nothing wrong with dry brushing, just like slap chop. There's nothing wrong with it. They are good for very specific things, but they're not good for everything. But there's nothing wrong with dry brushing. Dry brushing is used by a lot of people, even for higher level stuff. But I typically don't use it very often for higher levels, for my higher level stuff, because I'm trying to develop better and better control over where I'm putting light and things like that. Whereas dry brushing kind of takes some of that out, not entirely, but you know. It's just I would prefer to practice maintaining control over where the paint goes, and that's just where I am right now. But I know there are many cases in which case dry brushing can be very, very helpful, even on higher level painting or more, you know, display or competition level painting stuff. I just don't use it right now. Can you imagine being murdered by a Necron as it continues to recite numbers at you? Paint the limbs and parts first before putting glue. Yep. All here is windows. Paint before you send on. My old high school math homework. Be upset. It's detected inactivity. My booty hole. I've been talking and moving, and this has been moving around the entire time. I have no idea what TikTok is smoking. Primarch is just a giant weeb for the Emperor. I mean, yeah. A lot of them are. Can you give me one of those references where you can hire me? Best way to get realistic looking glow for molten rock. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. Yeah, so keep in mind when it comes to things that have like a hot, like a light source or really, really warm, they're going to be brightest where they're hottest. So when it comes to molten rock and stuff like that, they're going to, the brightest point, like that bright orange or even yellow, slightly yellow point is going to be in the center, and then it's going to fade out as it gets farther away from the center. It's just like with fire. When you're painting fire, it is going to be yellow or white in the middle and going out to kind of oranges and things like that when it gets up into the flames. It's same thing with swords. Swords that are like hot, they're going to be brightest in where the most heat is, and then as the heat fades, it's going to go out into gray. So it's kind of the same thing with molten lava. Now, there's different ways to do molten lava. You can have it look like it's broken up and it's mostly crusty on the top, in which case you've got lots of like small islands of black or dark red with bright in between, or you could have active flowing lava. It really kind of depends on what you want it to look like, but the main thing is, in order for it to look like it's glowing, it needs the color order needs to be correct. Long time no see. Thank you for your good advice. Last time I used my minis and they looked really good. Oh, excellent, Jacket. Welcome back. Hey, welcome back, everybody, from the ad break. Sorry about that. Apologize that I got super into explaining something and didn't realize when the ads were going. That is 100% my bad. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you everyone for the likes. Thank you for the gifts. I very much appreciate that. Hey, I didn't realize that was Chris. Hey, if you're still here, Chris, how are you doing? Hope you're doing well. Thanks for being here. Kind of missed him. Chris from Way of the Brush. I don't think he's doing that anymore, but he still posts every now and then. He's a cool, really, really cool guy. I like seeing him at different conventions. Unfortunately, I don't get to go. I don't get to see him very often anymore. It's one of the cool things about conventions and going to conventions is you get to see people you know from online a lot. It is one reason I am sad that I'm not going to Gen Con this year. It's really expensive to go to Gen Con, so I'm not sad that I'm not going because of the money. I'm sad that I'm not going because I'm not going to see a bunch of my friends. And that means I'm probably not going to see them until next Adepticon, which kind of sucks. But oh well. Do I do jewelry designs? I don't. Welcome. Make yourself at home. Hey, thank you so much for the follow. Oh, hey, thanks, Lethanios. I appreciate that. Welcome on over to the other side of things. Yeah, I am live on multiple platforms, just in case anybody is curious where I'm getting other questions. I'm live on multiple platforms, and I have kind of a consolidated chat for all those platforms here. So I'm trying to make sure I am tracking all of that.
Is never late, Frodo Baggins. Nor is he early. He arrives
precisely what it means too. Don Chunky Minis, thank you so much for the raid. Welcome on in. How's it going? How's it going? Welcome on in. How's your stream? What were you working on? Do you have any personal favorite gangs in Necromunda? I dig the look of a lot of them. Hard to choose. Yeah, I think my favorite gangs are going to be the Squats, and then the Escher, probably. Squats and Escher. I don't know. They're all so cool. I keep changing that around, but Squats have always been a big fan of and Escher are just big Amazonian badasses. They're fantastic. Following them up is probably going to be the Chaos Cultists because I'm a Chaos boy at heart. Do I have brush recommendations? Yeah, so there's a bunch of different brushes out there. If you're just beginning and you're just kind of looking for basic brushes, then cheap synthetic brushes with golden Taklon bristles. Look specifically for golden Taklon. That's the material that the bristle's made of. Those maintain a really good point for a decent amount of time, and they're stiffer. The bristles are stiffer, so they snap back into a point much easier. So it maintains a better point for longer, as opposed to softer nylons and things like that. If you're talking about, sables, then the less expensive sables that I would recommend are Game Envies or Monument Hobbies. Game Envies are more pure sable. Monuments are more of a synthetic sable, so they're close to Kolinsky sable, but not exactly like it. But they're synthetic rather than an animal product. Game Envies are pure Kolinsky sable, which means they're a pure animal product. Other brands, Artist Opus is good, Rosemary & Co. is good, Raphael, Da Vinci, those are all good. They all tend to be much more expensive. Hello, how are you? We were working on Fulgrim. Oh, very cool. Still working on the non-metallic metal of all the armor. Yeah, Fulgrim's got a lot. That is a heck of a thing to work on. That Space Marine is looking really nice, my friend. Hey, thank you, Don Chunky. Appreciate that. This is a Wolf Spear Space Marine. I didn't really want to paint a Space Wolf, but I had this Space Wolf model, so I was like, well, what are we going to paint him as? So we went with the Wolf Spears instead, and I've had a lot of fun. He's definitely a higher quality than I was planning on. I was not planning on painting to this level for just a palette cleanser mini, but I kind of got super into it. How's your Fulgrim going? If you have any pictures, feel free to share. We are link friendly over on the Purple app, so if you've got anything you want to share, feel free. Thanks. I've been buying from Michaels. I used Army Painter, but they split immediately for me. It's not like I've used them, but they just split. Oh, okay. That stinks. Yeah, Michaels will carry this brand. They're called Royal and Langnickel. Walmart also has this brand, and I believe Fred Meyer's also has this brand, or Myers. But it's Royal and Langnickel. I buy those off of Amazon in little barrels of 144 for about $35 to $40. So you can find them there too. But those are what I use for like most of my painting. I have been testing out the Golden Maple for the last 2 months, and I want to finish out the test. But overall, I'm not impressed with its longevity. The tip is okay, but the bristles have started to break. You see how some of those are kind of bent at a very sharp right angle? That's because they're breaking. And there, I just broke one off. That shouldn't happen after just 2 months of a high quality brush. So they're okay. I don't think I can really heartily recommend them for long-term use. Also, they're using AI and stealing art from some of my friends, which is not influencing my determination on their brushes. The brushes I have put through their use for the last 2 months, and they're fine, but they're not going to last you very long. I am very delicate with my brushes. I'm not hard on them, and the bristles are breaking. I'm not terribly impressed by that. But on top of that, there are other things that Golden Maple is doing that I'm not a big fan of. Let's see. Not a fan of Golden Maple. Yeah, there's been a lot of stuff coming out recently. I tried to get, like, I ordered these my own. Like, I did not accept these for free. I ordered the finest sable, Masters One finest sable, and like I said, the tip has been fine, but bristles breaking after 2 months, and I'm pretty sure this is not pure Kolinsky sable. I'm pretty sure it's a mixture. I'm not super impressed for the longevity. The best mini is the mini you have to paint. Space Wolves are cool for the paint. Zim is a cool brush too, cheap for Kolinsky brushes. Yeah, I have some Zims. Zims have been fine. Yeah, I try to maintain a rotation of brushes and trying out new Kolinsky sables from different brands, and I have quite a few Zims, and they were fine. Not incredible, but they were fine. Their bristles did not break after like 2 months, so I will say that about them. They had good sharp points. Their bristles didn't break, but their brushes, the heads are the bellies are narrower, and I like a bigger belly personally. So I would happily use them, but not as my mains personally. But you know, I've been buying from Michaels. It's not like I've used them. Yeah, that's the one I've been buying. They've worked surprisingly good. I mean, nice. Oh, I got you. Yeah, figuring out the lore of the different armies can influence, you know, which army you go with. Let's see. Where are we? We still need to do that tooth. Still need to work on that tooth. go. Sorry, I'm grabbing the paints that I want to use for the tooth here. Give me just a second. Where did I put the dark plum grape? Dark ivory. There we go. Cool. Cool. Get that out. I'll start with a light brown, then we'll go into dark ivory, and then I've got a lighter ivory here. We'll see if I need to do that. I don't want it to be too bright. I don't want the teeth to be too bright because I want it to stand out, but I don't want it to be like distracting. So we'll see if I need to go into that bright ivory or if the dark ivory is going to be bright enough. Let's see. Could I see if you have any Dark Angels? I don't have any Dark Angels at this time. I don't have any painted Dark Angels, no. I have the Space Marine heroes that are all supposed to be Dark Angels, but I don't think I'm going to be painting them up as Dark Angels. There's nothing wrong with Dark Angels, I've just never really painted any. You have any Dreadnoughts? I do not. I don't play the game, so I only paint stuff that I'm more interested in painting. And right now, Dreadnoughts don't hold any major interest for me. I'm one of those weird ducks. See, I'm losing more. I'm seeing more bristles on my palette. I'm one of those weird ducks that likes 40K but doesn't play the game. I used to play 5th and 6th edition, but I stopped. I play Necromunda, Warcry, and other smaller scale games now. But I like painting 40K. I like reading 40K. I like doing all that. I just but like if I don't think a model is really interesting, it's just not going to get painted. And I've yet to find a Dreadnought that just knocks my socks off and so like, yep, I got to paint that. I've yet to find a single one. They're cool, don't get me wrong. But they're just not, they're not knock my socks off, oh my god, I have to paint that cool. For me. Sorry. No, that's probably a lame answer and it's disappointing. But I am a firm believer in is if you don't have to, you should not paint anything you don't want to paint. Because this is supposed to be fun. This is supposed to be relaxing. This is supposed to be an entertaining hobby, a relaxing hobby, something you look forward to doing most of the time. You sell these? I don't. I buy these and then I paint them. But I do not sell them. I've thought about getting into tabletop, but too intimidating, not for casual play. I totally understand that. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of people that play like narrative tabletop games and narrative missions with 40K, things like that. And so then it's just, you know, you all come up with a scenario and you play that scenario, and however that goes, that's how it goes, and that's it. And you're just having a good time. You're eating some pretzels, drinking some soda or a beer, whatever you want, and then you just have a good time with that. So narrative play is a lot of fun. It's just the tournament scene and things like that kind of really took over 40K in a lot of ways, and I've just never been interested in that. And it's like even the shop that I call my home shop now, every time people play, it's always the tournament setups for, you know, the tables. It's never just, hey, let's just have a good time. It's always the tournament setups. It's like, oh, we're using these, and this is how the terrain is set up, and it's all based on tournament rules, and it's just like, yeah, that's not fun to me at all. It's fun for them, and go for it. It's fun for them, and that's all that matters, because they're having a good time, because they're the one playing. But to me, there's nothing fun about that. I would rather have a scenario and tell a story. I also don't like that GW's a company and the problems I have with recent editions. What are you currently running? What army? I'm not playing, Olivia. I don't play. I just paint. The stuff that I do the most, I play Necromunda. I don't play 40k and I don't play Age of Sigmar. I play Warcry, and I've got multiple groups for that, and I play Necromunda, and I've got multiple gangs for that. There are also smaller games that I play. Like I'm about to work on some Trench Crusade stuff. That's probably my next big project here on the stream. We'll see. And then, I've got a couple factions for that. I've got Flames of Orion, Battletech, a lot of smaller games. I'm working on 2 games of my own, so I'm working on those too. But yeah, I don't actually play 40k anymore. But I like painting this stuff. So like, there's this guy. Here is a Death Watch Space Marine that we painted, and I've got a bunch more Death Watch guys. I want to paint each one. I'm gonna paint a bunch of them up. Each one's gonna be a completely different chapter. But I had a lot of fun painting him. He was a blast. I think he turned out really well. I've got my Rainbow Warrior Space Marines. Rainbow Warriors is an original OG Space Marine chapter from 1987. The original 40k rulebook mentions them, but they were really not mentioned after that rulebook at all. So there's kind of a cult following for Rainbow Warriors on the internet, and I'm a member of that group. So I'm painting a bunch of Rainbow Warriors. Let's see, what else? We painted Jim Raynor from the StarCraft miniatures game, and I've got Kerrigan over here that we're going to be painting, but I don't know if I'm ever actually going to play this. We've got Mount Haven War Augur from the Warcrow miniatures game by Corvus Belli, and he doesn't look familiar at all. That was totally not on purpose. So we paint a lot of stuff, but I don't really I don't play many of the games anymore. You're going to be painting your Emperor's Children army tomorrow. Nice. I've got to start collecting this, I guess, Spearhead box, and Lucius the Eternal, and another couple boxes of Emperor's Children, because I do want to paint them. Like, they're beautiful models, and I want to paint them, and maybe I'll play like Spearhead or something with them. But I've got those, and I've also got Hedon Knights of Slaanesh for Warcry, for Warcry from Age of Sigmar. So both of those kind of work together because they're both Slaanesh-y. I'm looking forward to painting those. I hope you have a lot of fun with your Emperor's Children. There's a beautiful sculpts. My Death Watch look like shite. They have no depth or contrast in the black parts of the armor, so 95% of the model. I totally get that, Crashing Atom, and that's kind of one of the things that I wanted to do with this. I wanted kind of a shiny looking black armor without it looking anything other than black. And so this is just something I tried, and it ended up working out pretty well. It's just, keep in mind, if you're going to highlight black, you need to make sure that over 50 to 60% of it is still black. Otherwise, it's not going to read as black. That's kind of the main thing about black. What do you mean how big? Midnight Ghoul, what do you mean how big is Necromunda? Are we talking about in terms of a player base? I really don't know, but they're doing a new edition for it. And it sold. The last edition sold really well. So I think it's big enough. at least as big, if not bigger, than Warhammer Underworlds, which for some reason they keep pushing. But Necromunda itself is a world within the Imperium, and then there are multiple hive cities on Necromunda, and Necromunda has been inhabited by humans for over 10,000 years. Even before, actually, they've been inhabited by humans since before the Great Crusade. Like, because there are some of the hive cities have vaults and the like deep down in them that date to prior to the Imperium. True, I need to just make up a grayscale on my palette and throw in some sketchy highlights. Anything would be better than a blank canvas. Yeah, you could absolutely do that. I actually used blue grays. I used blue grays rather than pure grayscale because I have a hard time getting grayscale to blend. We've made a lot of progress in that here, but this is still not perfectly well blended. But if you have problems with blending with grayscale, you could try gray blues instead. Let's see. I like building scale models of planes, 1/32 scale, but I don't expect it to be the Thunderhawk to be 900. Huh? Mazo, the Thunderhawk. Oh, are we talking about like the resin Thunderhawk model? Oh shoot! I just killed my audio vibes. $900. I think you're probably right because Games Workshop is insanely expensive and there's nothing reasonable about most of their prices. Yeah, Legion Thunderhawk gunship, 950 US smackaroonies. Yeah. Yeah. Half a month's of rent. F that. F that. That's insane. Bit of the 3 blue colors from ProGirl you recommended. Perfect. Yeah, if you wanted to try that, those are the colors that I used on this guy. On his highlights, that's all the dark, black blue or blue black, gray blue, and then a tiny amount of white blue. Also be painting my 1985 LE2's limited edition 2 Space Marines when they arrive as well as Dark Angels. Oh, cool, Olivia. I have some of those. I don't have the full set. So I've been keeping an eye out for those. I do have... Where'd they go? I do have these 2 Space Marines from 1987. This is Brother Frost. One of the metal tactical Space Marines from 1987, and then I've got a bunch of these, but this is the plastic beaky Space Marine from 1987 too. Both painted up as Rainbow Warriors. Yeah, old school minis make me happy. Old school. And you guys want to see the scale difference? Here's Brother Frost. Here is one of the Primaris Marines. That's how much scale creep has happened. Look at that. Space Marines have gotten bigger. Space Marines have gotten bigger. Those are amazing, man. Hey, thank you. Thank you. I wanted the full set, but it cost me 400 pounds for 5 of them off eBay. Shoo! Yeah, no, I totally get that. That's why I haven't picked up all of them yet, because they are people are charging their weight in gold for those, and it's just like, yeah, no, I'm good. I'll wait. I'll find them. If I wait long enough, I'm sure I'll find them eventually. And if I don't, then I don't. Maybe if I hit the lottery. I never play the lottery, but maybe if I hit the lottery somehow, magic, then maybe I'll get them at that point. but good lord. I'll let that dry, and then we can come back in with our yellow again and neaten that up, kind of soften that transition a little bit. I think I've got too much moisture on my brush, and so when I put the highlight down, it's going on too diluted, so it's spreading out too much, so I'm not getting the really precise highlights that I wanted before. There we go. Reducing the amount of moisture on the brush has definitely made these much more precise. So I was getting little like small little blobs of paint, but then when it dried it was like dark in the middle, which tells me that all the pigment was going out to the sides, and so that means that there was too much water in the middle for the pigment to kind of settle evenly. So too much paint, too much water on the brush. A little bit better. Do you have any tips for painting Imperial Fists? You look up multiple ways to undercoat for yellow, because the most difficult thing about Imperial Fist is painting yellow. There are multiple different ways you can do it. You could prime white or prime bone and then do yellow over that, and that's much simpler to do. If you're gonna if you're gonna prime with a dark color, then things become a lot more difficult. You can at that point, there's a couple different ways that you'd want to like approach painting things like yellows. You'd want to use transition values. So if you primed black like this, right? And then you wanted to do yellow over that. Instead of going straight to yellow, go to a dark brown. Then let that dry. So you start with a dark brown, and the reason you do a dark brown is that it's going to be easier to get a smooth coat of dark brown over black, because the relative darkness is very close together. So when you paint this over black, not as much of the black is going to show through, so it's not going to look patchy. So you've got a close relative value here, and then once this dries, let me blast this with some air here. I'm not painting with my airbrush. I'm just blasting with some air. You could do the same thing with a hairbrush. Once that brown dries, then you could come in with like a light brown or even a medium brown. and do that. Now you can see some of this darker brown still showing through parts of this lighter brown here at the bottom, but it's not too much. It's really easy to fix. Okay, and again, that's because these two are the dark brown and the light brown are close to one another in relative value, whereas painting this light brown right over black, that's a bigger jump, so it's going to be harder to get a clean coverage over the two. So we're trying to jump up by small steps in value each time, as opposed to trying to do one big step. And this is because yellow is a notoriously weak and very transparent color, so it doesn't have good opacity. So if you put yellow over a really dark surface, that transparency, it's gonna show up. It's not going to cover very well. So now after that light brown, we can come in here with like an ivory or something, or a bone color, and go right over that here. And you see again, because it's not as big of a jump between this light brown and this ivory, as opposed to the black to ivory, we get a fairly strong and non-patchy result here. And this does take a little bit of time to build it up, but this is, if you didn't do this, you'd be doing like 20 layers of yellow. And it's still kind of patchy, and it's just because it's a light color. Light colors are notoriously bad at covering, but this is still better coverage than black. Now, if you're trying to do a large amount of like coverage, go opposite, make your brush strokes opposite one another. Do kind of a hash mark shape. So initially I did vertical brush strokes, and now I'm doing horizontal brush strokes, and that will help it be more and more opaque as it dries. And once you've got an okay thing there, we can come in here with our yellow. And we can do that kind of strong yellow right over the ivory. Whereas if we were to do just one layer of yellow over black, just let this dry. See how patchy that is? See how much of the black is showing through? So this would create a very dirty looking yellow. A very patchy, ugly looking yellow that'd be very difficult to do. You'd have to do multiple layers of yellow to get this even close to being to this. Whereas this took a little bit longer, but you've got in one pass, you've got a much more solid, vibrant yellow at the end. Does that make sense, Russ? That's one way of doing yellow. You can do this with any color that's got a weak pigment: green, red, orange, yellow, obviously white. You could do this with grays and go from black into white. Another option for yellows is to underpaint or paint all the shadow areas in magenta or hot pink or like a pinkish purple, and then glaze yellow over that, and that'll create a nice orangey shade. Did that make sense, Russ? Are you still here? You might not be. I might have been too boring. That's entirely possible. Oh yeah, the yellow on the left looks way nicer. Thanks, Crashing Adam. Yes, it's jumping up value, small jumps in value until your end, as opposed to try and do one big jump. And this is with Pro Acryl Yellow. Pro Acryl Yellow actually has really good opacity over black. Most lines of yellow do not cover black this well. So this is one of the better yellows over black. I hope somebody found that useful. Looks like Crashing Adam did. Doing any upcoming mini events? I don't have any planned outside of Oregon. I've got CritCon coming up in October. That's kind of my last scheduled one at the moment. I was thinking about maybe going to LVO. I don't know if I'll be going to LVO. I frankly doubt it. But it's not very far away. So I don't know. I kind of have to make up my mind pretty soon. But initially I wanted to fly over to Warhammer World because I've got family that I haven't seen in like 20 years, just 20 minutes south of Nottingham. So I thought maybe kill two birds with one stone, go visit family, say hi, what's going on, how's it going, and then go up to a Warhammer World in Nottingham. But I don't know about that, especially with stuff happening. Warhammer World US is supposed to open next year, and I kind of wanted to do Warhammer World 1 year and then Warhammer World US the second year. I think that'd be kind of cool. If I can't do it this year, then maybe I'll try and do both of them next year. Go earlier in the year to Warhammer World UK and then go to Warhammer World US towards the end of the year. I don't know. That would be rad. Warhammer World seems like a blast. It does. It seems like really cool. I don't think I'll be like absolutely blown away, but I could be wrong. Like all the exhibits and stuff look like they're really going to be really, really cool. Although Warhammer World US is supposed to be equally as cool. So I'm looking forward to that. What brushes do you like to use and what brushes do you wish you had? Marcy, the brushes I tend to use are cheap synthetic brushes for like 90% of my painting, and then I've got Kolinsky Sables for my more expensive or my more detail-oriented stuff. So I use these cheap synthetic brushes for like 90 to 95% of my painting, and then I've got a bunch of different types of Kolinsky Sable brushes for my really, really delicate work. What brushes do I wish I had? I'm going to be honest. I've made the choice to invest in the brushes that I want. So I have the brushes that I wish I had. There are brushes that I want to try that just to be more informed of what's out there, but I'm not missing any brushes that I wish I had. Because I made the financial decision to be stupid and just buy what I wanted, if that makes sense. What brushes I wish existed? I wish there were really good quality, like close to 1-to-1 in behavior, synthetic Kolinsky Sables. Because Kolinsky Sable brushes, natural Kolinsky Sable brushes, are harvested from the sable, which is a type of weasel. Those brush hairs are specific to a certain part of the anatomy of the sable, specifically the booty area, because they wick away moisture. Because the hair scales are structured differently to wick moisture away, which makes them really good for painting. Because it's to keep that area of the sable clean, right, from their booty hole. That's why Kolinsky Sable brushes tend to work really well, because they don't grab onto water or in paint as well, and they release it via capillary action much cleaner. They also tend to group together really well. So there's a reason why Kolinsky Sable brushes are valued, is because they perform really, really well. But it's still animal harvested. Now, I'm not vegan. I'm not anything like that. I want to conserve the earth so that it can continue to be used. But I would like to see an alternative, either a synthetic alternative or another alternative that has similar qualities that don't require animal cruelty. Yeah, that's what I wish I had. And multiple companies are working on synthetic sable brushes that mirror the behavior of sables, but none of them are perfect. None of them are most of them are kind of close, but not really. That's the type of brush I wish existed. But I have a problem with spending my money wisely, so I just bought the brushes that I actually want. I don't know if that makes me a dick or not. It probably does, so I apologize for that. Oh yeah, that would be a rad. Warhammer World seems like a blast. I can't find any decent brushes anymore unless they're $25. Have you tried Game Envy? I've really enjoyed the Game Envy Kolinsky sables. They've performed pretty well for me. They're not in my rotation right now, just because I agreed to test out these golden maple brushes. They offered them to me for free, but I did not take them for free. I bought them myself, just so that I wouldn't be held to their timeline. And I'm kind of glad I did, because I'm not terribly happy with their lifespan. The golden maple brushes, their bristles are breaking on me after only like 2 months of light use, or well, consistent but delicate use. But I have enjoyed my my Game Envy ones. You do have the Game Envy, but for the tiniest brushes, I struggle to get paint to move off them well. Could be paint consistency on my end. Usually is. That's possible. I don't use the small brushes very well because I run into that same problem. Small brushes just don't have any belly, so and acrylic paints dry super fast, so I don't use really small brushes. But that fits that. Just because that fits my painting style better. We're already playing Warhammer. In terms of iffy financial decisions, new brushes aren't bad. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. So just curious, how do you do blending color transitions for like highlights or skin depth? I usually use layering, a mixture of layering and glazing. So if I were to show an example of layering, so this is just a really primitive example of layering, where you do an individual layer of each color. So you start from your beginning color, and you go one slightly higher, or one switch, one layer towards the other color, then another layer that's even closer to the other color, then even closer, and then finally you've done your switch over. So I do layering, and then I'll take that really dark color, or the starting color, and I'll create a glaze out of it. And this is for higher level painting. I'll create a glaze out of it, and then I'll just glaze over. And then I wait for that to dry, and then I'll wait for that to dry. And then I've got a glaze of the lighter color, and I'll glaze that like this. And I'll go back and forth in between those. And you see how it's starting to blend together a little bit, just because I'm using those colors to kind of filter in between. I'll do that to smooth things out. There's other ways to do it as well, but that's primarily what I use. And because the miniatures are so small, I don't have to be super precise about it. Does that make sense, Mark? There are plenty of other ways to do those transitions. You could do really strong transitions and then use an airbrush with really thin paint to create that blend, and just blend one over the other. You could do wet blending. You could do wet blending where you're actually, with wet blending. This is an example for anybody who doesn't know what that means. Let's see. So I take some really thick paint and I put some here, and then while that's still wet, I take the other paint and I put it over here. And while they're both wet, I physically blend them one into the other. So that's wet blending. You can do this to set up to start a decent blend, and then if you need to do this a couple of times, you just wait for this to completely dry, and then you just wet blend over it again. I had my airbrush way too close to this, so it actually pushed a bunch of the pigment out of the way. So I can come back in here and I can just do that wet yellow again, and then I come back in here and do that wet brown again, and I rinse my brush off, and I can just sweep that yellow into the brown, and I can sweep that brown into the yellow, and the yellow into the brown, back and forth. And you can do that multiple times. You could do that multiple times until you get something that's a little bit smoother. And that this does take practice, but it's really, really useful. This is something Sam Lens uses a whole lot. He's a big wet blender because it sets up a decent blend very, very quickly. And then once this dries, if I need to smooth this out, I can do glazing back and forth, or I could do another wet blend over it. But this is another way that you could do a lot of this. And on really small surfaces, it doesn't take much for this to look decent. But remember, these are acrylic paints, so they dry very quickly. That's why I did that with thick paints. I did not thin those paints at all. Both of those paints were basically straight out of the pot. I just plunked them down because paints straight out of the pot are very thick, but because they're thick, they dry slower. And when you're doing the wet blending, that will thin them out because you've got moisture on your brush from rinsing your brush out a bunch. So that will thin them out a little bit, but you don't want to start with them thinned out. You want to start with them pretty thick because that will keep them workable longer, and you need some working time. Ad starts in 4 minutes. Hey, Hoodguard, how are you doing? Yeah. How are you doing, buddy? Good to see you. Okay, what else? Because we got that. Got that. Did the tooth. I'm channeling Burnt Peanut. I'm sorry. Duncan Rose just put out a video last week. He primes his old sprues black and practices edge highlighting on them. However, never done. That's a great idea. Yes, absolutely, Wolfguard. This is a Wolf Spear space. Wolf Spear. Yes. Good call. Of course you would call that. Of course you would call which Space Marine chapter this is. If you guys don't know who Hoodguard is like one of the top lore and lore keepers and lore heads on TikTok and Instagram and the like. He's got some YouTube videos as well where he's got some pretty cool interviews with people and some cool reviews of brushes and things like that. Definitely check him out. If you're on TikTok, you need to be following Hoodguard if you want to know anything about the books or Warhammer 40k or even Trench Crusade lore. He is the GOAT. So of course he would call what Space Marine chapter this is accurately. Let's see. Gonna have to go get some sleep. Got work in 6 hours. Take it easy. I'll look out for your next live. Hey, thank you, Olivia. Have a wonderful rest of your sleep. or the rest of your night and have a good sleep. Thanks for being here. Let's see. I've been leaning on the heavy metal style and ready for a change. Like, I got you, Mark. Yeah, no worries. No worries. Hello, is this a comp or just practice? Just practice. I wanted a palette cleanser. Wanted a palette cleanser mini. And so we did this. And the next minis we're gonna do, I think, are from Arsenal. I think that's the next mini I'm gonna do. It's one of the pilot minis from the Arsenal game. I'm gonna do this guy. And then after that, I got to decide on competition stuff. I've got 2, maybe 3 ideas for Golden Demon next year, and I also want to start working on stuff for other things. Golden Demon, first one for 40k, I'm going to be doing Caiaphas Cain and his bodyguard, just because it's Caiaphas fucking Cain. And then for AOS, I'm going to be doing the new Butcher model from Ogre Maw Tribes. And then for Old World, I've got a model for Old World that I can't remember her name, but I've got a model for Old World. No, I've got a bunch of stuff I need to do, but I constantly put my Golden Demon stuff off until it's too late. So I'm not going to do that this year. You aiming for 4 Golden Demon pieces and a Worthy piece? Yeah, see, I want to do 3 Golden Demon pieces, at least 1 Worthy, and something for miniatures for art, if Monument's doing that again. So that's kind of my goal, and I know that with as slow and procrastinating as I am, if I don't start working on it now, none of those are going to happen. I'm going to snooze my ads here real quick. So, looking forward to seeing what you're doing. Am I winning, Thotimus Prime? I am always winning because you're here. Space Wolves! Yep, this is a Space Wolf successor chapter called the Wolf Spears. I had a Space Wolf model and I was like, I don't really want to paint Space Wolves. So I decided to do a successor chapter. But he's got all his wolfy goodness. Yeah, we're going to do... Now, let's see. The wolf spears, their symbol has 2 red spears behind the white wolf symbol. Yeah. And this is not a wolf spear symbol, but I hijacked it for that purpose. So we're gonna paint in a couple of spear points back down here. We're just going to start that with mahogany. And we're going to brighten that up as we go. But I gotta tell you, out of everything that I want to paint for Golden Demon, the one I'm the most excited for is frankly the Butcher model for the new Ogre Maw Tribes. That model is my favorite out of all of the new Ogre models, because it's got the most movement, and it's a refresh of the model I hated the most from the old Ogre Maw Tribes. I couldn't stand the Butcher model before. I did not like that model at all. It was just ugly. So this is a kind of a big redemption arc. Oh, you're doing the Zote? Yes! Dude, Zote. Yes, absolutely. That reminds me, I need to paint my Blackstone Fortress stuff eventually. I need to do that soon. I've held on to that for so long. And I've got the Zote expansion for it, so I've got that model. I'm so happy that they've made that Zote available again as a Nemesis. Because, like, creating those cool models for just Blackstone Fortress and then never making them again made 0 sense. Like, that makes no sense. What are you guys smoking over at GW? I mean, we know you're smoking a lot, but Jesus. How could you not use the Zote model again? You have to. Hey, have a good rest of your stream, Beardy. Thank you, Thotimus. Appreciate it. Hope you're doing well. Appreciate y'all being here and hanging out tonight. Thank you very much. If anybody has any questions about Necromunda or mini painting or anything like that, do not hesitate to let me know. I'm happy to demonstrate or explain. We've done a couple demos tonight already, and that's been very helpful for a lot of people. So if you've got a question and I can demo it, that will often be very valuable for people. So don't hesitate to ask. Blackstone Fortress box goes for $300 on eBay now. I should sell mine. You reduce your pile of shame. I have an extra one. I should sell that too. Is that just the box, or is that the box with like expansions included? Because some of those expansions were going for like $300 by themselves. Like the trader, the one with the death guard, that was going for like $300 at one point just by itself, which is insane. I feel like this is a serious talent and testament to patience. Hey, thank you, Kadeza. Appreciate that. It is a testament to the development of patience. That is certain. I was never this patient before, but buckling down and just deciding, hey, I'm going to take all my time doing this because it's worth taking my time to do. That has done more to develop my patience over the last few years than anything else in my life. So this is not inborn patience. This is developed patience, which proves that it can be developed. Just the main box? Woo! Yeah, the expansions are super rare. Yeah. And that's why I grabbed them all when I did. I'm not interested in selling them. I want to paint them. But I think it's stupid that they only did one run of each. That's just dumb. It's dumb. Doesn't make any sense at all. And that's frankly why I don't really have a problem with people like scanning those rules and making them available online, or the data cards and things like that. Is like, look, they're going to make them once, they're never going to make them again. That's okay. Real wizards.
Where we playeth nothing but
Trance.
and more chance.
Wololo.
This are not thine elder matriarch, Stacy.
Nerdy Tokyo, thank you so much. How are you doing? Good to see you. Oh, we've got an ad going. Shoot, I just totally lost track of it. All right, we're gonna set this down for a second. We've got an ad going, so I need to use the restroom. We will be right back. So don't go anywhere. All right, we are back. Thank y'all for hanging out. Appreciate it. Thanks for giving me a quick break there. Use the little wizard's room. Struggling to find anybody to play board games consistently. Otherwise, I would keep mine. No, I totally understand that. Finding a consistent group of people to play with is one of the most difficult things you could possibly do. Especially for a little bit more specialized games like that. You know, games that maybe are often a little bit more involved. A little non-standard. So that makes sense. Do you have any recommendations on fading or general tips? Yeah, I mean, there's multiple ways you can do shading. You can just use a wash, and that will do a lot of the work for you. It doesn't give you a lot of control, however. But generally, when you're shading, you want to choose where your light source is. Is it straight up above? Is it off to the side? Is it in front? Is it behind? Don't do behind. It won't make sense on a miniature very well. But like if it's straight up above, then you can do things like take a miniature like this, and then get like a lamp or something from and have that shine on the miniature from directly above, and wherever it's black, you know that is hidden from the light. So that's generally where you want your shades to be. That's one way. The opposite is true for highlights. So if you look at all the gray areas, all the reflective areas, that's generally where you want your highlights to be, or your midtones in your highlights to be. So you can do that, and you can take a picture of the miniature. When it comes to painting and shading things in manually, I will typically start with a fairly dark color and work up to my midtone, and then if I need darker shadows, then I'll come in and work those in. So with all of this, I started with a really dark gray, and I've preserved that shade in a lot of areas. But when I need to come in and do more of a shade and add more shading in, then I can come in with that dark gray, or even a black, or a mix to make of that black and dark gray to even make a darker gray. And then I can come in and, let's say back here, I can come in and go in with that darker color and just layer in an even darker shadow right there, where even less light is going to hit, and I can just come in. So it's really, when you're adding in shade, you're making decisions on what areas are being occluded from the light source, what areas are is the light being blocked. And that's where your shadows are going to go. And when it comes to non-metallic metal, that gets more complicated, because the shadows on non-metallic metal aren't actually occlusions. They're reflections of the surrounding lights, or the surroundings of the environment around it. So the shadows on non-metallic metal and things like glass and other reflective surfaces are different than the shadows on non-metallic surfaces. So you do want to think about them slightly differently, but on matte surfaces, you may need to come in and do some glazing or add in some shadows. Like under here, there might be more shadow underneath this leg here since it's being blocked from a lot of the light sources. So I can come in and I can just very gently, very cleanly add in some darker shadows here. And I'm doing that very, with light coats of paint. I'm not doing heavy coats of paint at all. You want to try shading without the wash and stuff? Yeah, so without the washes and stuff, then you're going to be manually painting in a lot of those shades. And what I'm going to encourage is that you go darker than you think you need to. Because if you haven't started doing this very much, then what you think is dark is not going to be dark enough. Because generally when we're looking at things like this, when we're first starting out, we're thinking in terms of flat color, not actual rendering three-dimensional images. So when we've got, a new miniature and we've, painted the highlights and everything, the highlights aren't bright enough, the shadows aren't dark enough, it still looks really flat. So if you're going to be doing this and trying volumetric, that's what it's called, volumetric highlighting, volumetric shading, because it has to do with the volumes of a surface, go darker and go lighter. Go brighter than you think you need to, go darker than you think you need to. And also another thing you can do with shading to really help things stand out from one another is called dark lining, where you can take your shade color and draw very thin dark lines where each detail meets. So like this front armor panel, I can add in a dark line right around the outside of it where it's meeting the panel underneath. And what that's going to do is it is going to create an outline that also acts as a drop shadow underneath this plate. And that helps the human eye to differentiate these different details from one another. Because these miniatures are so small, anything we can do to help the human eye see the details and see where one detail ends and another begins, that helps the miniature be clearer and easier to read, easier to understand what's happening. So these kind of dark lines are very useful, and it's a type of shading that you can do. Is that helpful at all? I know I didn't give like step-by-steps. It's very hard to do step-by-steps for a lot of this stuff, but I hope that's helpful. Hell yeah. Okay, good. Mm-hmm. 40K group got decent size. Sunday we had 10 games going. 40K, Combat Patrol, Kill Team, good stuff. That's awesome, Crashing Adam. That's fantastic. That's a big group. That's a nice big group. Do you do commissions? I do not. I cannot stand doing commissions. I've tried it many, many times. And I don't like doing commissions. At least not for individuals. I've done some commissions for companies, and those are not as annoying. For whatever reason, but doing commissions for individuals is torturous to me. I don't really know why. It just is. It's not enjoyable. Because I have tried many, many times, and I just can't. Honestly, fair. Sometimes people in the space make it bad. Yeah, it's not just that. It's just it's the people don't make it bad. It's just maintaining the motivation to finish is very difficult. Now, I've done some small commissions and some small things for very small companies, but those are fine because I got to choose whether or not I was going to keep the model or just hand the models over to them for some photos and then they return the models. So, you know, ultimately I could be, you know, maintaining possession of the models. But when I'm doing commissions for individuals, I'm not, you know, the model's going away. And you know, it's just like that's not as enjoyable for me. Okay. Let's see. Frankly, I think I'm done. I'm not sure what else I want to do on them. Like there's a bunch that I could be doing. I could be making this highlight smoother. Could absolutely be doing that, but I'm not sure I really want to. Like, again, this is not a competition piece, so I don't have to. This doesn't have to be my best work by any means. And I already think he looks pretty cool. Let's start working on the base. I want to make him a Mars ground. We're gonna go with a darker Mars. I'm gonna start with mahogany here, which is a deep reddish brown. A little too much water there. I'm just going to hit this with some air. Again, you can use a hair dryer for this to speed up the drying of things like this. I have a hair dryer, but it's way over there. It's not plugged in, so I'm just going to use the air straight from my airbrush. I'm just doing pure air through this. I'm not doing anything else. Just pure air through the airbrush. And then, what do I want to use? Okay, I'm gonna take some orange oxide, which is kind of a orangey brown from Procryl. I'm just gonna, that's not enough. I'm gonna use a dry brush. I'm not gonna actually dry brush, so I'm just using the dry brush to kind of smudge it on. Like packing it in, kind of like packing eyeshadow, if you're familiar at all. Just packing the color in. not covering everything. But I also don't want this to flow a lot, which is why I'm doing the stippling and the packing action here. I don't need this to flow. I need this to go on the model and sit there. Now I'm also going to include this on the feet because it's very dusty. So we're gonna add some of this to the feet, just a little bit. Because you do want, when you're using a base, you do want the model to be tied into the base. You want them to be tied together at a certain level. Wipe a lot of that off. Now we'll go with full-on orange. And this I'm going to do with my regular brush, but that's just because it's smaller. And again, I'm not trying to get this to flow at all. I'm spreading it around kind of chaotically. We might do a couple layers of this. I don't know. So on the feet. Do a little mix of these. Down here underneath the rocks, I want to bring in some more of that mahogany for a shadow. I also kind of want to do a bit of a drop shadow, or like a occlusion shadow here, just darker area right underneath him, just so it kind of looks like the light's directly above and it's casting a shadow of him directly down. Just kind of tie the two surfaces together a little bit more. Make him more tied to the ground because he's affecting it and the ground's affecting him through dust. There's a couple different ways to achieve that type of visual effect. Take some of our pure orange and just pick out some of the upper portions of some of these rocks, just so they're a little bit more visually distinct. You're gonna have rocks. You want them to stand out a little bit, right? What's the point of having rocks if they don't stand out a little bit? Okay, then I'm going to take the brightest color, bright, dark, warm flesh. I'm trying to figure out how any tiny rocks I want to glue into my orc bases before doing all the texture paste, and this is triggering my executive paralysis. I got you. See, I use a mix that contains different sizes of rocks, so I don't have to make that decision. I let the feel of the paste as it goes down on the miniature make that call for me of how many rocks or where, and I just kind of decide where the heaviest amounts of paste are going to go, and that's it. And then the rest of it is up to the nature and the natural distribution of these rocks within the Bear Cavalry paste that I use. Also, these rocks are from these are all from Bear Cavalry's ground texture base, which means that all these rocks are actually coffee grounds, because that's what they use. They recycle coffee grounds. It's this stuff. Bear Cavalry, give me chocolate, and it tastes like chocolate. It smells like, it doesn't taste like chocolate. It smells like coffee and chocolate. So don't eat it, but it smells amazing. But that also allows me to not have to worry about the executive decision making of like, it just kind of happens. It kind of goes down. Coffee grounds, but trying to do more desert base for these, so I've got some sand and also some cactus. Gotcha. Yeah. That works. That'll work great. But you kind of, if your executive decision making or executive dysfunction is preventing you from doing it, you got to figure out some way of randomizing it. You got to develop a tool to get around that executive dysfunction. And I do not have a suggestion for you, because the tool I have is I leave it to the paste. You could make a paste out of the stuff you have, or you could pour it all into like a small container and then mix that up a whole bunch, and then you just dip your bases in with white glue on it, and then boom. You don't have to make that decision anymore. That's a possibility. Next thing I'm going to do to add more dustiness to this, we're going to add some actual dust. Colored dust. Pigment dust, in fact. So if you want to ever try pigment powders or anything like that, a real cheap way to do that is to buy a set of chalk pastels, and then using the back of your hobby blade, you just scrape some off. Now I have pigment powder. Now I don't want it to be quite that intense, so I'm going to work in some brown. I'm just going to mix some brown into this, just a little bit, and I think I'm going to throw in some red. Then I'm going to mix this up, just so it's not quite as yellow. There we go. And I can do that. And one cheap pack of chalk acrylics or chalk pastels, that they're going to last you forever. They will last you for frickin' ever. And there, I'm just going to mix these all up. So I've got a darker orange here. Hey, Lord Yukon. The app you suggested really helped. Oh, wonderful. Good, 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 good. Okay, and so now I'm going to take this dried pigment. And I'm just going to tap it all over the bottom of his boots, all over the base. Best to use a completely dry brush for this, but I needed to brush this out a little bit. Any tips to paint Grey Knights? Kind of depends on what you're struggling with. Metallic paints in general are pretty straightforward to work with. So it kind of depends on what's going on, what you're doing. Any particular questions or any particular things that you're struggling with Grey Knights? I've only really painted one Grey Knight, so most of my feedback's going to be mostly theoretical. Once that dries, it'll look a little bit dustier, but because this was applied with kind of a slightly damper brush, I am going to have to brush a lot of this down. One thing with pigment powders is because they lack any binder, once you put them on the model, you can shift them around and adjust them if you need to. So if you need to wipe some off, you can wipe some off before you seal them, because as soon as you seal this with like a varnish, the pigment's not coming off anymore. So if you need to make any adjustments, like if you need to reduce the amount of pigment in anywhere, you need to do that prior to any varnishing. Blue shine on the silver armor. Just bought the Kantor blue, and my plan for the next time is dry brush silver and try to do a blue wash with the Kantor. If I don't like it, just try to get a blue wash ink. Gotcha. Yeah, that my approach would be very similar to that. Let me see if I can pull out the one Grey Knight that I did. I never finished him. I never finished him, so he's kind of in a half completed status. But that's basically what I did, is did the airbrushing. I did silver, and then I did like a blue. I airbrushed blue through the airbrush over the silver, and it just got a really light silver. And then I airbrushed silver over that again, just so the blue would be more in the highlights or in the dark areas. So there's, then, you know, if you wanted even more blue, you could very easily give it a blue wash, a really watered down blue wash. So the wash would just go down into the crevices. But I didn't go super heavy with the blue on this guy. But yeah, the bluish steel metal is super important for a standard Grey Knight look. Yeah, this was Voldus. This was going to be like I was painting this, and I was going to put a 3D printed head of who I was making the miniature for in here instead of Volus's head, but it ended up never working out. That was the original plan. But yeah, so I would definitely try what you're talking about. Either a blue wash, or you could get that silver and add some blue to it, and then see how that looks, and then, you know, adjust it from there, or do a blue wash after that if you want more blue in the recesses. Adding the blue to the paint itself will give will shift the paint towards blue, which is fine, but it won't give you blue in the shadows as very much. It'll make the whole metal look blue, and if you're doing multiple passes of silver, then that can absolutely work. You could do your darkest or your middle silvers with the blue, and then do you know, a blue wash after that to clean it up and get more blue into the shadows. But it really kind of depends on how you want to do that. But that's how I would approach it. But again, I've only done Grey Knights once, so unfortunately, if you had no idea, that's what I would have suggested. So I think you're on the same wavelength. Hi, I just started painting and I'm struggling somewhat so far. Any tips on World Eaters? They're your first models. Oh, very cool, Alpha Wolf. That's awesome. I use Corn Red and Retributor armor, by the way. Cool. So what's the problem that you're having? What's the issue that you're running into? Is it patchy? Is it just not going on right? Like what's the specific issue? Because there's thousands of things that could go wrong. Well, not thousands, but there's a lot of things that could go wrong. So me stabbing in the dark is not helpful. Almost Evil, as a general tip, the biggest issue is they look flat and toy-like. I don't know how to shade properly to make it seem like they're in a battle. Gotcha. Okay, so there's multiple things that you can do to help shade them and make them look a little bit more realistic. The first is a wash. You could hit them with a wash. Either if you want to go darker, you hit them with a Nuln Oil wash, which will make things look, it's a black wash, it'll make things look darker. If you want a rich red wash, you could use Carabug Crimson, and that is going to be that's more of a crimson wash. Now other things you can do, because the shade themselves, the shadow itself is not going to make it look like it's in a battle. There are other things that will help make it look like it's in battle. The shade and highlighting, those things will make it seem like it's like more real and less toy-like. So let's see. Do I have any pure like red? Red. Yeah. A second. So these aren't World Eaters. These are Red Corsairs, but they're both got red. So let's take a look at this thigh here. Okay. You see how he's got his red here, and then underneath where the shadow is, it goes darker. That's a painted in shadow. So what you're going to want to do there to get that is you want a darker red than corn red. Like you want I'm not even sure what in GW's line what red is darker than corn red. Corn red is a pretty bright red. So they've got to have something that is a darker red. But I'm not sure what its name is. So let's see if we can find another spot. So let's take a look at this arm here, okay? So we've got our red here, and then to add a shade, we paint underneath with that darker red. And we paint where the light is hidden from the main light source. So generally we always imagine the light source is directly above. Unless you're doing like some atmospheric piece or something like that, where maybe the light's coming from behind them or to the side. Most gaming minis, they look best with the light coming from directly above, which means the shadows are directly below. And you take that darker red and you paint underneath the underside of things, and you make sure that wraps around out to the side a little bit too, so you can see, if you're looking at it straight here, I can see that shadow starting here, and then over here I can see where the stronger red is. So you're adding in the optical illusion of shadows there with that darker red. Now you can do this with a wash, and a wash like Carroburg Crimson will do a lot of this, but it won't do it as precisely. It'll do it, it'll flow into the crevices, which is what you want. You want the crevices to be darker. It'll flow into the crevices and then darken those down, and that's good. That's often good enough for most people. But if you want to do more realistic looking shadows, you're going to want to treat them as volumetric. You want to do a volumetric highlighting, volumetric shading, which means volumetric means you're just respecting the volumes of the miniature, the shapes here, and how they would be illuminated and occluded by light. And by occluded I mean just blocked. So the shadows are where light is blocked from hitting them, and the highlights is where they're fully exposed to the main light source, and so they're fully illuminated. That's called volumetric highlighting. Other things you can do, which are much simpler, is you can go in with brighter reds than corn red, and you can do some basic edge highlighting just on like sharp edges of things, and that will help your miniature to read as a little bit more detailed and a little bit less flat. Also, you can take that brighter red and go right around where the light will hit most of this miniature the most. And there's several ways that you can tell where that light is going to hit the miniature the most. And one of those ways is you take that miniature, you put it underneath a lamp, and generally you do this when the miniature is just primed black, but you put it under a lamp and you see, okay, where does light reflect? Light's reflecting over here, it's reflecting off his forehead, it's reflecting here, and I can take a picture of this, and then I can remember where those lights are, because I'm pretending this lamp is where that main light source is. Edge highlighting also is a big thing, and even if you're like doing other stuff, edge highlighting is something that Games Workshop uses a lot in a lot of their art, a lot of their cover art, and it's very, very useful for all levels of painting. Almost everybody uses edge highlighting to a certain extent. So yeah, you can absolutely do that, and that just edge highlighting just helps the human eye see those edges and helps see this as a three-dimensional piece. I recommend painting little chips of clear red or silver white and sponge. Yeah, so if you want to make them look like they're in battle, you can do weathering. So you can do like chipped armor, scratched armor, things like that. Blood on the sword or the axe or whatever. That will make it look like they're actually in battle. You can also, put mud on their shoes if they're running through like, muddy fields, or if it's bloody mud, you can mix up a bloody mud color and put that on their feet. Those type of environmental things will make it seem like the miniature's actually involved in the war, in a conflict. Blood, chipped armor, splashes of blood, things like that. That makes it look more like it's involved in actual action. But edge highlighting, volumetric highlighting, that kind of stuff will make the miniature seem like it's in the world, just in general. It won't tell you exactly what the miniature's doing, but it'll tell you more that the miniature's in that world.
He arrives
Precisely what it means to. Oh, hello! Cool Studio, thank you so much for the raid. Bodacious Pie, hello friend, how are you? Face Story, how are you doing? Cool Studio, how's it going? What were you working on? Also, if you're struggling with light lines of size, I recommend color pencil. Just saw it. Sorry, autocorrector, lines of light. Don't remember how it's called. Edge highlight. Yeah. Hey, Dark Tales, how are you doing? Thank you so much. I was struggling with shadows and highlights and highlighting so bad. No worries. Feel free to hop in anytime and ask questions. I do have a Discord where you could pop in and post pictures and ask for feedback or see other people's discussions about painting if you're interested in that. Otherwise, feel free to just pop into the live whenever you want library and ask questions. That's what we're here for. We're here to answer questions and help people get better at painting as we get better at painting. Like, I'm not a painting god by any means. Don't get it twisted. I'm good at painting. I'm getting better at painting, but I'm not a painting god. However, I love teaching. I very much enjoy teaching, so I am here to answer questions because that's what I like to do. It makes me happy to see other people learn and become more confident in this cool little weird hobby that we have about painting tiny little plastic people. It just makes me really happy. I'll definitely try weathering and edge highlighting next time I paint. Excellent. Doing good. Just looking at what to get for my army. Ooh, what army are you doing? Oh, what's the Discord? So later I can post it. The link to the Discord is in my profile. The warp dropped me off here. Where am I? Hello, Nurgle. We are painting a wolf spear. We're just almost getting done with painting one of the Anathema's wolf children. Yes, Sisters of Battle. Yes, exactly. Doing fantastic. Was working on a bust of Nyx. Oh, cool. Hey, have you watched the Miniature Mentors or the Miniature Masters show? I don't recall if I've talked to you about that yet. Man, that is. Watching them paint busts on that was insane. It was so good. Tips for Red Corsairs. Tips for Red Corsairs. The areas that are black, the best way to keep them reading as black is to make sure that 50% of them is still black. At least 50%, if not more, is still black. So when you're doing your highlights on the black, welcome. Make yourself at home. Keep them very small. Keep them small and don't make them very intense, because it is very, very easy to make black read as like a gray or something other than black. So whatever you do, try to keep as much of the surface black as possible. Here's another example of a Death Watch. So I've just got lines of highlights there to make it kind of look like a glossy black. But you can see still most of those black surfaces are true black. They're nothing else. And then it can still read as black, just a glossy black. So those black surfaces on a red Corsair, because they carry so much contrast for the model, do everything you can to keep them reading black and not going into gray. And you can do that best by making sure over 50% of each black surface is still black. Perfect, just joined the Discord. Oh, excellent. Wow, that looks nice. Thanks. Let's see. Yep. I've been staying up to date on it. Excellent. My mentor is on it, so I'm a bit obligated to watch. Is that AC, or is AC your mentor? I was really worried about him for a little while on the show. Nice. I'm Jelly. Jelly, he's your mentor. That's awesome. I was pretty worried about him, but I think he's done really well. If you guys have not been watching Miniature Masters, what are you even doing? You need to go watch Miniature Masters. It's like Face Off or Chopped or Iron Chef or Ink Masters, but for miniature painting. And it's amazing. 3 episodes are out so far over on Squidmar's channel. I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of Squidmar stuff, just because I don't like the Mr. Beast type of, like, we cut a manta in half for this diorama. I don't find that entertaining. But this Miniature Masters, they've done incredibly well. Love the painting. Hey, thank you, Art Lover. I appreciate that. What's the best way to make the eyes on helmets glow? I use Warpstone Glow for my Khorne Berserkers. That is a great question. That is a good question. So there's a couple different ways that a glow can be done. I'm going to use this guy as an example. So glow happens, something appears to glow when it looks like it's emitting light. So there's a couple different ways that can happen. You can have a pretty subtle glow where it's like dark and then it goes into kind of like your next color and then into brighter. If you're doing Warpstone Glow, that's a good start, but once it's dry, I would recommend having a hot point in the middle there, to show kind of like where the pupil is or where the source of that light is. I don't have any Warpstone Glow, otherwise I'd totally show you right now what I'm talking about. But paint, if you're painting the lenses like white or yellow and then doing Warpstone Glow over it, wait for it to dry and then paint on a dot or even a small section of lighter color like a yellow and then white over the Warpstone Glow. That will help the eyes look like like it's emitting light, because if you look at an LED or a filament light bulb or even a candle, it's letting off light, right? But the source of the light is visible. It's really small and intense. If you've got a lens that is just all one color, just like that Warpstone Glow, or it doesn't have a lot of contrast in like where the light is coming from, it's not going to look like it's glowing as much. You can intensify the glow look by making sure there's a source of light that you're painting in there. Does that make sense? Do I have anything that I could do like a really good example of this with? I'm sure I could find something. Here's what I need. That's what I need. Okay, just as an example, I'm just gonna paint a lens in just a blank green. Just a basic green here. Okay. I'm off for a lurk and go to find some food. Have a wonderful stream, Wizard. Thank you, Ghoul. Have a good one. And now I'm going to do kind of the equivalent of Ghoul, of the Necron Warpstone.
Listening to 102.3. Where we playeth nothing but
Chance.
and
More chance.
This are not thine elder matriarch station.
Okay, so now we've got kind of our lighter green here, and this is kind of our warpstone. This is just the equivalent. So here we started off with our green islands. We hit it with warpstone, and now we've got this kind of lighter green here, right? It looks cool, but how can we punch that up? How can we make that look more glowy? So what I was talking about before is adding in like the source of the light. So in this case, we're going to take some yellow. We're going to add a source of light there. It's right in the middle. It's smaller than everything else. Okay. I'm going to let that dry. And with yellows, sometimes you have to do a couple layers of it. That's okay. On an eye that's kind of small, on an eye you're probably only going to have to do one. But hold your breath when you're doing this. Just letting that dry. And then you can take something like an off-white yellow, or you could take white. And then you got the really hot spot in the green, or in the green and the yellow there. Does that make sense at all? So you're trying to communicate that this is glowing, and part of getting something to glow is showing that there is a light source, or that there is a source of that glow, that it's not just kind of like emanating out of nowhere. If you want bioluminescent, that is absolutely something that it has a more soft origin. Whereas something that is more like predatory or something like that is going to have a distinct origin. Like a lens or a spotlight or something like that is going to have a distinct origin within that glow, and that makes the whole thing look more glowy. And then if you want to make that kind of glow actually come out of the thing, then what you need to do is make sure there is a dark spot around the lens, because there's a divot around the lens where the light's not going to get to, because it kind of dips around the edge of the lens. If you paint over that, you can cut that back in there, but you need that darkness there. And then we can come in with our other greens. And we're not going to go anywhere near as bright as in the light, because these are not, this glow is not the source of the light. This glow is the effect of the light. So it's not going to be anywhere near as bright. And this makes much more sense on like a 3-dimensional object as opposed to a 2-dimensional object right here, like this. But you're going to need that dark area, that dark line around the lens. Just to set up the contrast, and because the physics of the light, the light's going to spill out around here. It's not going to hit just at its very own base. But that's only if you want to do a glow. You don't have to do a glow. If you just want to make the eyes look like they're glowy without doing an actual object source lighting, then, you know, take that warp stone, that green you're using right now, and then use yellow and white and make a source of that light. That will help. What's the best way to highlight silver? Brighter silvers. Honestly, brighter silvers. You can also make the silvers look brighter in terms of like relation to one another. So if you've got a bright silver and you want certain areas to look, certain parts of that silver to look brighter, then you can darken the other areas of the silver, and that will create a relative value shift. So I guess that's the word I'm looking for. Let me see if I can get a good example here. No, it's not a brighter silver, it's white gold. Let's see. Where are my really bright chrome? Here we go. So if you've got a silver, right? You can do a couple things to make that silver, or to highlight that silver. You can take a brighter silver, like a chrome, or a white silver, something like that. Every line's generally going to have a regular silver and then a lighter silver. And then you can take that whiter silver and go above it. Now, this, I'm not sure if this chrome is actually brighter than that. These are two different paint lines. Looks like they're pretty close to one another, actually. So, you know, Monument has a silver medium, which is kind of a white silver. That's something you could use. If you have silver that doesn't have a huge amount of difference, like a brighter silver that's not a huge amount of difference, you could come in and create a shadow with a darker silver. And that darker silver, in relation to your regular silver, will make the regular silver look brighter. So you could take that darker silver, make your shadows, and then do like a mixture 1-to-1 of your regular silver and your darker silver, and use that as your silver, and then you could use your regular silver as the highlight because it'll be brighter than the other two. But generally, the way to highlight silver is with a brighter silver. Or a white metal, or something like that. Snooze. Does that answer your question, Art Lover, or did I misunderstand? I very well could have misunderstood and just gone down a rabbit hole. That is entirely possible. That helps good. Any advice on painting eyes? Hold your breath. Don't, when you're doing the pupils, don't do the pupils as a circle unless the miniature's really big. If it's a normal gaming size miniature, then do the pupils as a straight line from the top of the lid to the bottom of the lid and then clean up around it. Let's see. We did this last stream. You see her eyes there? We painted that on stream, and we did the whites, and then we just did a straight line of black from the top to the bottom. And we didn't paint the rest of the face because I was just showing the painting eyes. But if you want to avoid eyes that look startled, you do not want whites at the top or the bottom. So you don't want to do circles. You want to do a straight line, top to bottom. Now, when we're getting into bigger miniatures, like busts or things like that, then you've got a lot more room to play around with. You've got a lot more room to kind of maneuver and do things with. And that advice is going to be completely different than painting eyes on a tabletop miniature. That is going to be completely different. Because the scale is completely different. Tricks that work on tabletop level do not work on busts. Busts give you a lot more room to play around, but a lot more room to make mistakes. And if you got space, if you got room, once you do your pupil, then you can do things like add highlights, like specular highlights for the sun glinting off the eyes. That'll make the eyes look more alive. Those miniatures, their eyes are so small, I'm not able to add that kind of specular highlight to them. But I know people who could. People with much steadier hands and much more muscle control than I have. I don't know if that's helpful at all, Feeling Objective. That's kind of the most common advice I give when it comes to painting eyes, because I think it's the thing that people run into the most. I'm just blasting the edge here with air so that it dries, and then I can put another layer of black here. What am I doing? I'm finishing up painting a Space Marine. So we just spent the last few lives slowly painting this guy over the course of a couple of hours each time, and now he's done. And I am currently drying the paint on the edge of his base so that I can do a second layer of black, because the black rim acts as kind of like a acts kind of like a picture frame and helps him stand out from the base. It makes him look a little bit more neat and put together. But yeah, we just finished painting the Space Marine here. And some other things that we've been painting. Let's see. There's another Space Marine we painted, but we put him on kind of a decorative base. There's another Space Marine we painted. These are all Space Marines from from Space Marine 2, if you ever played that game, or Space Marine 1. Some other minis we've painted. Got this Knight in Shining Armor for like Dungeons and Dragons. Got this Dwarf Mage that we painted. Just having fun, relaxing. This is kind of how I relax from my from my job. It's how I'm able to relax from my job, but also just get out some creative energy. I don't know why painting tiny plastic army people. I don't know why that's relaxing to me, but it is. So, it is what it is. All right, now once this is done drying after stream, I will varnish him, and then we'll take some pictures. But yeah, he's pretty much done, and we're gonna go ahead and end stream here pretty soon. Let's see. I've made a rock decision, which is that if I only add tiny rocks to the half of the boys, there will be enough variety between units to be interesting. Perfect. Perfect. Looks really good. Hey, thank you so much. Yeah, we're just having fun with him. Tried to do some cool stuff. Didn't go full out, but definitely tried some cool stuff. I think he ended up looking really cool. Just as a reminder, this Friday, we will be streaming on this Friday, come hell or high water, because this Friday is when we will be doing the giveaway for the Myconid Minis Woolmanduit miniatures. If you're interested in getting into the giveaway for this set of miniatures, then check out the Discord. Go pop in there. You don't have to do anything else. Pop in there, go to the Woolmanduit giveaway channel, and just write in Woolmanduit. The instructions are there. You'll see pictures of the finished miniatures that I painted in four Myconid minis. And then you'll see links to the STLs if you want to buy the STLs, or you can sign up for the giveaway, and then on Friday we'll do a giveaway after the community showcase. We'll do our giveaway then. Now, if you are interested in showing off what you've been working on, we do a community showcase every Friday after the first hour of stream. So if you're interested in that, hop into the Discord, throw what you've been working on in the Works in Progress channel or the Completed Projects channel. If you're looking for feedback, you can ask for feedback directly in there as well. We do not give unsolicited feedback. So if you want feedback, you do have to ask for it. I do not believe in unsolicited feedback for myself, and it's not something we encourage in the community. So if you're looking for feedback, ask for it. Otherwise, just show off what you've been working on, because we'd love to tell you how cool it is and what we like about it. And that is this coming Friday, starting at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Yeah. I appreciate you all being here. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for hanging out with me. I very much appreciate it. We're gonna go ahead and end stream here, and I'll see if I can find anyone to raid out to. If not, then we'll end.